Each week, we share with you a story from the seats, and today's story comes from Melvyn Turner. Melvyn.
I was intrigued by the question, how is Grace Presbyterian Church part of my story? The question not is, but how. As I thought about it, Grace must clearly be part of my story based on time alone. It is over 31 years since Chris and I joined in membership here, and this surprised me when I did the math. I've been a member of Grace longer than I've lived in England. In fact, more than half of my life. So yes, clearly Grace is part of my story. So then how? It's a long story across many years, built up from many smaller stories, but all connected and joined. They all exist because at some point there was my first GPC story. We're challenged to not judge a book by its cover, but sometimes I do decide based on the opening paragraph. So what was that opening paragraph to my 31 years here? What was it that made me want to read on and to live out other stories here at Grace? What was my first story? Chris and I married in a church in Indiana, and we knew that we wanted to find a church in this area to grow and worship together. Chris grew up as Presbyterian. I grew up as Church of England. It was not hard to decide what we would be looking for. We visited Grace in the summer of 1990. We came in and we worshiped at the first service. As we were leaving and about to head home, two people spoke to us, and we found ourselves being shepherded to a Sunday school class. My memory is that we were sweetly coerced to join them that morning, and we spent the next hour in the young couple's Sunday school. 31 years later, we still worship with those two people, Bonnie and Tom Moreland. We'd arrived at this church just to see what the worship was like, but now there we were in Sunday school. We met several people that morning and were introduced to Sherry and Dwayne Herney, the adults who were teaching that class. 1 hour later, as the lesson was ending and we were prepared to leave, we were invited to join the class at a picnic dinner that was planned for that evening. And so on the day that we came to just check out Grace, we found ourselves sharing a meal on the sidelines of a field in Plano and watching a game of polo. You may have seen the statue of the horse and polo player in front of the stores that park on the east side of the tollway. That's the tribute to the polo field that used to be here. Each time I drive through that area of town, I'm reminded of my first day here at Grace. I did not know at the time or really define what it was about the young couple Sunday school class, but looking back, it was community. There are many couples at a similar stage of life, early in marriage, starting families, each wanting God to be part of their journey. Sherry and Dwayne are simply amazing people. They love God and they chose to invest in this group of adults. Each Sunday they would host a potluck lunch for any and all that could be there. We'd worship, we'd learn in Sunday school, and then we'd stop by our home to collect our contribution to the lunch and head over to Dwayne and Sherry's home. It started with that sweet coercion, but I quickly found community, belonging, welcomed. Social events sprang up, and we have activities twice a month, sometimes scavenger hunts of unusual places and sightings across Plano, and in gathering for dinner and sharing our successes. How did we document what we had found? Well, of course, our trusted piece of technology, the Polaroid camera. It was later in 1990 that Chris and I and others were invited by one of the couples in Sunday school to be a part of a Bible study group that they were forming, to gather and share snacks on a Friday evening and to study God's Word. There was less coercion needed here. I was with a group that I already loved and one in which I felt safe. I would not be judged based on what I knew or didn't know about the Bible. Once again, an invitation to join. Community, belonging, welcomed. I had attended Sunday school as a young child, but never really had the opportunity, my excuse, as a teenager or a college student. Now here I was with Chris, worshiping at Grace, active in Sunday school, fellowshipping in the group social events, and now part of a Bible study small group. Who would have thought? The two people who formed that Bible study group, Tracy and Jack Davenport. Because of that first invitation, I have been blessed to have experienced 31 years of small group Bible study as an important and supportive part of my life and my faith journey. Community, belonging, welcomed. I know that God has a sense of humor. I see it in this story. Different people in Sunday school were asked to teach. Teach a Sunday school class? No way. But there I was, signed up to teach with Jack on the Gospel of Luke, a full gospel. Why not something short like the third epistle of John? That's just 14 verses, 219 words. But no, the Gospel of Luke. And so each Saturday I would meet with Jack at 7 a.m. at McDonald's. We'd have breakfast and we'd work on the lesson for that Sunday. 7 a.m. on a Saturday, Gospel of Luke, McDonald's. I don't even like burgers. I seem to recall this is when Jack first introduced me to the expression, facilitate the discussion. Sweetly coerced yet again. It was new for me and I think a little unexpected, but at this time I also found community and belonging in helping to do things for Grace. There's something very special about the group of people that decorate our sanctuary for Easter and for Christmas. Belonging in community with people who serve behind the scenes. Again, who would have thought? And being welcome not just because I'm okay on a ladder, but because of who I am. A side note, if you're wondering about this community that decorates our sanctuary, there's an opportunity coming up very soon. You will be welcomed. Over time, greater clarity has emerged for me about how I found my church home here at Grace. Now looking back and seeing that first story and how subsequent stories have unfolded. And church home is not an expression that I use lightly. God brought people into my life who drew me in, welcomed me deeply into community, and gave to me that sense of belonging. I wonder if those people see in their stories their response to God. This is my lower story. It's my first lower story of how Grace Presbyterian Church is part of my life. It's about community, belonging, welcomed, and of course, sweetly coerced. Thank you.